I'm Ben Boychuk. I'm hitting record.
Okay.
We'll start in a minute. Kelley, thank you very much.
Kelley, thank you very much. Where did you go to school, Kelley? Where did you go to college?
I went to Central Connecticut State University, so
Where
not so
that?
far from home.
Where is that, please? Is that in Bristol?
That's right outside of Hartford.
Oh, very nice.
Right outside
very
of
nice,
Hartford.
Very nice.
No,
nice.
in Hartford, right outside Hartford. Yeah.
Very nice. Very nice. Very nice. Very nice.
Okay.
Where did you go to school, Kelley?
Okay, Ben,
Where did you go to college?
Say again?
I went to Central Connecticut State University, so not so far from home.
Where is that?
I'm hearing YouTube.
Is that in Bristol?
That's right outside of Hartford.
Oh, very nice.
Right outside
very
of
nice.
Hartford.
Very nice.
No, in Hartford, right outside Hartford.
Is somebody watching the feed? Because if somebody's watching the feed, I'm
I want to, yes, and we're ready to go. Ben, you don't
I'm
hear it
ready.
anymore.
I'm ready, sir. I'm
Okay.
ready.
I want to welcome everybody to the world. According to Ben Stein, I want to thank everybody that's watching and listening us on the YouTube channel that subscribes to us now on Ben's fancy newsletter. Ben Boychuk, you can say where it is because you have a much better memory of that than I do.
Don't you run this thing? It's benstein.substack.com. All the cool people are on Substack now.
All the cool kids.
Yeah, benstein.substack.com.
And I want to really thank everybody for following, for subscribing, for listening, for following. And of course, I want to welcome our amazing new guest tonight, Kelley Vlahos from the Quincy Institute. She formerly of the American Conservative, you said, and
Yes.
an expert on many things, not just one thing. And
we'll see.
We'll see. And of course, as always, welcome back to the program, Ben, the handsome man Boychuk, managing editor of American Greatness. You look divine tonight, Ben Boychuk.
Thank you.
And
I'm toasty warm.
Yes, he's had snow. He was snowed in, 4 inches of snow in Big Bear. But of course, I want to thank everybody out there for listening. And one of the important stories of today, Remzo is still on his catcation. If he joins us, he will let us know. But one of the more important stories of today, if people missed it, was we have 45 Republican senators who will vote not to impeach, who will vote not to convict, who don't even think it's constitutional for this thing to move forward.
Great.
So here's the names of the 5. I believe it's the obvious. It's Murkowski, Collins, Romney, Sass the ass, and it's one more who I'm who I can't remember. And here's the question that I want to ask all of you. To the victors go the spoils. We know that elections have consequences. We know that. But one of the things elections shouldn't have consequences to beat the crap out of the supporters of the other party. That should just not be the case. You won, right? That supposedly you won. But the goal, Ben Stein, after you win an election is to at least fake like you care about the other half of the people that didn't vote for you. Just fake it. Come out and say, stop beating them up. They don't deserve to be in prison for their thoughts. And that is not the case. 75 million people right now are living in absolute fear of losing work, of losing employment, of being doxxed online, of all of those things. What say you, Ben Stein?
Well, I say that it's bad enough if the Democrats are doing it to Republicans, but the fact that those 5 Republicans are doing it to Republicans is really extremely shameful. And again, I'll go back to saying what I said. I'm not allowed to say that the election was stolen, so I won't say it was stolen because I do not want to wind up tomorrow morning in prison. But I do think that the idea that Mr. Romney and several of his friends are voting to convict the president of the United States from their party, who, as far as I can tell, didn't do anything wrong, is shameful. And I don't know how Mr. Romney can sleep at night. I mean, there's something distinctly wrong with him. That's just my opinion. I'm not a psychiatrist. It's just my opinion. But there's something wrong with him that he has so much venom and anger in him at someone who legitimately won the primaries and then legitimately won the 2016 election. And it just puzzles and bewilders me that a person should have as much hatred towards a fellow member of his party as Mr. Romney does. It's sad because it's sad to think that high members of our party are not really right in the head, at least as far as I can tell.
Remember, he did drive from a certain place to a certain place with a dog on the top of his car.
Right.
So this was a guy
Rambler, I believe.
Yeah. So not right in the head, it goes in line with that. What say you, Kelley?
Well, I mean, I think you make the best point you make is the 75 million people who are watching this on television. They're looking at the tweet feeds, they're watching cable news, and they realize, or they're sensing, that they are the enemy right now. And they're listening to the language of legislators talk about new terror laws and cracking down on people for the way they think, the way they behave, the way they act, the way they vote. And they are very nervous. And then they see this display, this impeachment that we must have. And they realize that, or they sense that something's at stake. And I feel like if there was all this talk about healing during the inauguration, this is the exact opposite of healing. It's just dragging out another 4 years of let's get this guy. And they're going to get this guy, but it's at the risk of just rupturing the country even further, I think.
Well, with Ben Boychuk, of course, we have to hear from you, but I'd like to address what you just said, Ms. Vlahos, please, if I may. But Ben Boychuk, please.
I'll make it brief, and I agree with what Kelley just said. The fifth name you're looking for, by the way, Judah, is Pat Toomey of Pennsylvania.
Oh yeah.
But I think we should deliver a metaphorical tip of the hat to Rand Paul of Kentucky, who was the guy who introduced the resolution at the Senate today, saying that this impeachment trial going forward is an unconstitutional, what's the word I'm looking for? Farce. And I think the case is pretty straightforward. Impeachment in the Constitution specifies people in office. You're voting to remove them from office. Well, Trump is already out of office. And so there's a robust debate about the constitutionality of retroactive impeachments. But the Republicans here, I think the 45 of them are pretty much on the same page, saying this is a waste of time and energy. But on the other hand, and it is kind of telling that the Chief Justice of the United States, John Roberts, has said, Constitution says the Chief Justice presides over impeachment trials of the president and the vice president. Well, Trump isn't president anymore, so I'm going to stay out of this one, thanks. Which is the reason why Pat Leahy, as partisan as they come of a Democrat, is going to be presiding over this trial. So it should be a real circus.
Well, it's a very much of a display of what a bad choice Mr. Roberts was to be Chief Justice. I mean, here's a guy who's I hate to use this word, it really is not a very brave human being. The word that comes to my mind is chicken something, but I don't want to say it. But he should not be in a position of high responsibility. A Chief Justice should be a man of extraordinary, or woman of extraordinary courage, willing to stand out from the crowd and blaze new paths. These people are just looking for acceptance in a place at Washington cocktail parties and Washington dinner parties. Long ago, when I was in Washington, what everyone said was, "Oh, he's looking for a seat near Kay Graham at her house on R Street." But she's now sitting on the right hand of Jesus, so she's not going to be sitting in her hand for a long, long time, I hope. But anyway, the unity was always a fake. That idea of unity coming from the Democrats was always a fake. They always were trying to stir up division, even up to the last moments. I'm sure even today, they're trying to stir up racial division. They're endlessly trying to stir up the blacks to be angry at the whites, for women to be angry at the men, for the workers to be angry at the capitalists. Even though many of the Democrats are, in fact, large-scale capitalists, the Democrats won this election, if they won it, and I think they did, if they won it by if they want, they did so by dividing and dividing and dividing and dividing. They're still at it. They have no other means to govern. They have no meaningful platform. They have no meaningful defense policy, foreign policy, budget policy. They have only division and hatred, and that's what they work by.
So here's my question to all of you, because this is the ironic thing, okay? So President Trump has essentially lost all his ability to talk to his 75 million, people. He has zero. He can't get on any of the social networking. And I'm sure right now he's in a major decision of what to do next. I'm sure he's got many of people that are, coming to him with big business decisions. But the question is, again, they're giving him a forum. In order to you want to shut this guy up. You're not going to convict him. And yet you're going to make him a martyr by impeaching him and bringing him into the floor.
Well, you're making him a martyr and you're making yourselves look like fools. I mean, no one likes a traitor. And those people from the Republican Party who are going to vote to convict Mr. Trump are just traitors. I mean, that's all there is to it. Clearly, I suspect I'm the only person in America who actually has read the speech that Mr. Trump gave on the White House lawn, the South White House lawn. And he doesn't say a word about anything about violence. And he says, in fact, if you're going to go up to the Capitol Hill, do it peacefully. Nobody seems to have read that. I don't know where any evidence is going to come from at all that he wanted anything but peaceful protest. There's not a word in there about any kind of violence or damage of any kind.
Kelley?
She's having problems with her internet connection, sir.
Oh, that's all good. Ben Boychuk, what's
well,
I
yes,
can hear you now.
And not only that, Ben Stein, I read something interesting earlier today, and I'm not sure how, I think it came from the New Yorker, but there was a lengthy account of a video that somebody had made of the so-called insurrection at the Capitol. And the guys who got into the Senate chamber were remarkably deferential. There was a Capitol Hill police officer in there, in fact, who asked them very nicely to leave. And eventually they left. It's the strangest sort of insurrection where you mill around for a few hours. Now, yes, they broke windows and did all of that, which it means you get charged for trespassing and you get charged with vandalism and you get charged with unlawful entry, maybe, which is what a lot of these guys are getting charged with, and not sedition, not insurrection, not treason. And so there is a difference between the high-flown rhetoric of the pundit class and the politicians who are trying to make hay of all of this and what actually occurred.
It's also important to note, Ben Boychuk, that the woman that got shot, nobody seems to be speaking about how exactly that happened. And where is the investigation into this woman that got shot?
Yeah, there is no investigation of that. And there's very little investigation of whether or not there were people in the crowd who were, in fact, agent provocateur sent up there by people who wanted there to be a riot and wanted there to be vandalism and wanted there to be injuries and death. There's no investigation of that. What they've got is a witch hunt and calling something an insurrection over and over and over again, hoping that eventually people will believe it. And what I find amazing and frightening, and Dr. Goebbels would be proud of this, yes, people are now believing that it was indeed an insurrection, despite the fact there is just no evidence that it was an insurrection, that it was anything other than basically a bunch of fraternity boys going up there and having a good time and dressing up in costumes. And the only real evidence that there was any intent to capture the government exists just in the imagination of the likes of Nancy Pelosi.
It's the word they use, by the way, Kelley, insurrection. I'm convinced they're using a word that most people don't understand the meaning. So they hear insurrection and they're like, oh, and nobody actually has Googled the word insurrection. Kelley, how's your internet service now?
I don't think
it seems a little better. I'm
sorry. But please, Kelley, I beg you.
I texted my kids and I told them to get off the internet so I can do this podcast. I agree with you. I mean, it has such a weighted feeling when you say insurrection. It sort of conjures this these images of the Civil War, and sedition is another one that's being used a lot. And I found I mean, I was in the office that day. I walked down to the White House. I milled about as the protesters were coming up from the South Lawn. Or where was the president? The president was on the, where did he give the ellipse? He gave his speech. I'm sorry, but I was in the sort of fray of people moving from one point to the other in the protest. And my first impression that there were just a lot of people there out of, I want to say anger, but just frustration with the election process, frustration with the election outcomes. I didn't see a lot of anger. I didn't see a lot. I didn't feel even an edginess in the crowd, but they were headed to the Capitol when I saw them. I was surprised at what I saw on the news. I went back to my office, put on Fox News, and then all of a sudden I see these people milling about the Capitol. A lot of people looked like they were tourists. They were actually gawking at pictures and walking in between the velvet ropes. And I said, what's going on? Did they suddenly open up the Capitol for tours? Because they weren't rampaging. Now, yes, there were people who did rampage and knock through windows and scare people. But there was a little bit of just gawking and people sort of freewheeling in there and taking selfies. And by the end of the day, though, it was called an insurrection, sedition, attack, terrorism. And that's what bothers me, is the language that's being used, I feel, is a setup for another war on terror, but it's on half the population.
Well, exactly right, Kelley. It's a setup, and nothing really happened beyond what would have happened if you'd taken several busloads of fraternity boys and turned them loose there. There was no attempt to seize the levers of powers. This was not Lenin leading the Bolsheviks to seize power in the capital of Russia or capital of what became the Soviet Union. Nobody was seizing any kind of power, any kind of authority. They were just having a good time. True, they were breaking the law, trespassing against the law. It was nothing even remotely like an insurrection, not even remotely like it. And to be calling it that is to be casting a very severe accusation at the Capitol Police and law enforcement officers generally, and I don't think they deserve such severe criticism. Obviously, what the people did there up there on Capitol Hill was very wrong. They shouldn't have been there. Absolutely. Without question, they shouldn't have been there. Trump didn't tell them to go there and be violent, and they weren't, by and large, they weren't violent. So I don't get it. I mean, it was a bad thing. It wasn't like the Civil War. It wasn't like transporting the Japanese Americans to internment camps in miserable places in the interior of the United States. What was it exactly besides a group of fraternity boys going mad, having a big party? I don't get it. There's nothing about seizing power, nothing.
And if you just tuned in, you are listening to The World According to Ben Stein.
Kelley has more to say.
I will get to her right after this segment. And if you just tuned in, like I said, but I want to give a shout out to Ben's fans, Kirk and Charisse Artrip in Phoenix, Arizona. Thank you for listening. Thank you for supporting us. And if Ben Boychuk from American Greatness, who looks edible tonight in that outfit, can please tell us where people could find us.
Well, obviously you want to, if you're joining us for the first time, thank you, watching the live stream on YouTube. Please hit that subscriber bell so that you know when we're going live. Tell your friends, tell your loved ones, tell your enemies, just tell people that this is where we are for the moment. Please subscribe to the newsletter, benstein.substack.com. Like us on Facebook, and be sure to follow the podcast. You can subscribe to the audio version of this podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, and other platforms where very fine podcasts are hosted.
And give it 5 stars. We have a lot of 5 stars on our podcast. We need more 5 stars. And I want to welcome everybody back to The World According to Ben Stein. We are joined tonight by Kelley Vlahos from the Quincy Institute, formerly of the American Conservative, and a lot of other think tanks. Sorry to interrupt you. I know you're having a little internet issues, but that's okay. You were in the middle of saying
and I was going to say, I don't want to downplay the violence either that did occur, because I was brokenhearted to see all of the fighting that was going on between some of the protesters, rioters, whatever you call them, with the Capitol Police outside. I personally could not believe that there wasn't more security around that Capitol.
That was a mistake by the Capitol Police. That doesn't show.
Conversation.
That was not Trump's doing. And by the way, totally think it was a very, very bad thing. There's no doubt about that. But Trump did not whip them up to do that. I mean, they did it. Maybe they were crazy. Maybe they were high. I suspect a lot of them were high. The Capitol Police didn't really stand up and do their job the way they should have. But this was not an insurrection. It was a bad, bad thing. But an insurrection would have been if they had seized the Capitol. They didn't seize the Capitol.
You see, you raise a great point. Ben, you raise a great point, and I think the biggest issue that Trump supporters have, and I'll throw this to all of you, the biggest issue that Trump supporters have is what they've seen in the last year with the absolute chaos and destruction by BLM and Antifa, of actually insurrection, of taking over police stations and capitals in certain states and seeing actual people dying, seeing buildings burnt to the ground. And then in comparison, we have 45 or 50, people that stormed the Capitol, broke a couple of windows. One of them got shot. And then so for the Trump supporter, it's really hard to reconcile. You call the 45 that stormed the Capitol compared to the thousands that have stormed major cities, committing major destruction. So I'll leave that to you guys.
Well, we know what's going on. The media will call it on the Republicans, will call fouls on the Republicans and the conservatives. And by the way, I don't think these people were really Republicans or conservatives. They're anarchists. They were kids. They're game players. I don't think they belong to any kind of serious political movement. They were, to my way of thinking, they were a joke, but a very, very, very bad joke.
I don't know about that, Ben. I think that a lot of the people. I mean, remember, people flew thousands of miles to be there for that thing. Now, and I have no doubt that there were some Antifa types in there who were there to stir up trouble. And by the way, Judah, it was more than 45 or 50 people who busted in there. It was quite a number of people who busted in there. But everything I think Ben has said, Ben, I think you're generally on the mark. I just want to add to it slightly. So what Trump was impeached for was incitement. That's in the article of impeachment. That's what the House impeached him for, incitement. And you as a lawyer, Ben, know very well that incitement has a very specific meaning that the courts have said, the Supreme Court has said. The big case on this is Brandenburg versus Ohio from, I think, 1969. And it's nothing that, as you said earlier, nothing that Trump said in his speech rises to the level of
not even close. I mean,
not even close.
It's kind of an embarrassment to the educational system of America and to the Congress of the United States that clearly no one read the speech. It was a damned long speech, and he kept saying, "I'm really sorry for the fact that this speech is so long, and it has so much data, and it's going to bore you to tears." But there's nothing in there urging people to do anything at all violent. There's just not one word in there about that. See, argue, yes. Protest, yes. Hold signs, yes. Write letters to the editor, yes. Violence, no, don't do it, says Mr. Trump. Don't do it. So what are they impeaching him for? They made up an event, and now they're impeaching him for a made up event.
Right. So maybe the best thing that could happen from this farce of a Senate trial that's going to be coming up, since it's scheduled for 2 weeks, and I don't know how it's going to be presided or if it'll be presided fairly, and I suspect there'll be lots of objections going back and forth, but maybe the best thing that could happen would be to relitigate the election. Maybe to go point by point, line by line through Trump's speech that day and say, does this sound like incitement to you? What is this? And maybe get all that out on the record. And maybe that might have some effect on public opinion. I don't know. But certainly if the Republicans had half a brain in this whole thing, if you're going to be subjected to a 2-week trial, then make the very most of it that you can.
So Kelley, that's a great point, Ben Boychuk, but I want to tell you exactly how this happened with Ben reading the speech. I walked into Ben's office. We were in the desert, and a very close friend of his that he used to work with said to Ben that Trump clearly incited this violence. And now me, as a person that actually listened to this or heard the speech live, I said to Ben, I said, I respect your friend and I met him and he's a nice guy. And Ben then informed me he's also a never Trumper. So I said, well, maybe we should read the speech. So on the drive back from the desert, Kelley, he actually read the whole, it was a long speech too. It took about an hour of the drive to read the speech. And Kelley, I don't think anybody has read the speech. I mean, the media or seen the speech, Kelley.
I mean, Kelley,
yeah, I don't think so
you're
either.
Obviously a terribly smart human being. Did you read the speech? Did you see any incitement there?
I didn't read the speech. I listened to it as it was happening in real time. And my takeaway from it was that it was bitter, that it was sad, that perhaps he needed to pack it in. And it just was a wrong speech. As trying to look at this objectively, I felt like he needed to just call it a day, and he didn't. And I think when I heard it, I didn't hear incitement. I did hear a lot of, I heard undertones of anger and frustration.
Madam, with the greatest respect, with the greatest possible respect, you're obviously a super intelligent human being. We are honored. I am honored to be on the same screen as you. That none of the things you're mentioning even remotely rises to the level of a crime. Being angry, being bitter, giving too long a speech, failing to pack it in. Those are not crimes. Boring, yes. Bad mistake, clearly. But rising to the level of crime, absolutely not even close.
And what I'd like to, what I feel like we should be talking about as a country is what brought this all here. And I know a lot of it is Donald Trump. He was sort of a vehicle that really enabled people to motivate and mobilize and come down here and just and sort of vent their anger. But we need to talk about why those people were susceptible to his message and why they got so angry and why they felt compelled to smash those windows and rampage into the Capitol. And I feel like those are the things that we need to be exploring here. Because
those are very good things to explore, but with the greatest possible respect, I have read the speech. I've watched many hours of video on TV about the break-in of the Capitol. Did not see one weapon displayed. There might have been some. I haven't seen them. I didn't see one act of vandalism against priceless artworks hung up on the wall. I didn't see one act of vandalism against statues, incredibly priceless statues in the statuary rooms of the Capitol. This was a group of fraternity boys, in essence, going mad and acting like little children. It was not a political act of any kind except of idiocy. There was no criminal. I just saw no criminal intent there. I of course defer to your idea. There was a mistake. Obviously, there was a mistake. He would have to be insane not to at this point say, "I made a serious mistake,"
which he did.
Why doesn't he? He should.
He did. And
God bless you.
What I think the point that Kelley's trying to bring up, which is actually a very good point, is why is it that 74 million people in this country feel that their throats are being their oxygen, they have no ability to speak? How did we get here? How did we get here? I think, Kelley, that's what you're trying to say is, how did we get here? Was so many people are so angry and disbelief in the government that they flew from all over America. They drove, they flew, they took buses to this event because they felt for so long that they've been stifled, Kelley. I think that's what you were trying to get to.
Why do the Democrats feel that they've been stifled for so long when they control the media, they control the universities, they control the high schools? Why do they feel that they've been so stifled that they have to punish people and put them in prison for acting like fraternity boys? And by the way, I was in a fraternity in college, and I love fraternities. So don't send me any hate mail about fraternities. But I just don't see, with the greatest respect to you, Madam, I do not see criminal acts here. I
You
see
didn't-
anger on both sides. There's too much anger in this country altogether. I firmly believe this country must kneel in prayer to each other and to God Almighty for the anger that's in our hearts, and prayer of apology and ask for pardon. But whether or not there's a crime that the law would recognize, I don't see it. With
Ben, I think you misheard
respect.
Kelley. I don't think she said there was any crimes committed. I mean, that Trump said anything that to commit a crime. Kelley, am I mistaken? I think.
No, I agree completely, and I personally am not for the impeachment, and have no quibble or with that at all. What I'm saying is that I think what the Democrats are doing, they're deflecting attention on the real issue here, and there are people in this country, and there were on January 6th, who honestly believed in some of these conspiracy theories beyond our imagination, and that compelled them to believe that they needed to save the government by smashing through
there are a lot of crazy people everywhere.
The Capitol. And there's a lot of crazy, but just that said, I think the impeachment, the ensuing rhetoric about domestic terrorism and how Trump supporters need to be reprogrammed, re-educated, they're fixed, there's something wrong with them. I think that's caused a lot of people to further dig in and go down these rabbit holes of conspiracy theories. And the anger is actually getting worse. I'm sensing it, and what I see on the internet, I'm sensing it from people that I know, and talking to people who live with people who are really fervent Trump supporters who did go down rabbit holes of conspiracy after the election. And I think this impeachment and the way the Democrats are handling it is making that worse. It's not making it better. It's causing further rupture. And I feel like if we don't examine the dynamics and wrestle and reconcile them, we're going to be in some serious trouble. And I don't know what form that's going to take. People talk about civil war, but I feel that the Democrats are going, as usual, overreaching. And I think this isn't going to get better. It's going to get worse.
And Kelley, in the interest of full disclosure, I am one of those people that believes that mass amounts of election fraud did happen. I know I could end up in YouTube jail for saying that, but the numbers just statistically, Ben and we've discussed this on the show. You know, I'm not talking about Dominion, and I'm not talking about all the other conspiracy theories. I'm just speaking about simply numbers.
Right.
The numbers don't add up.
And Judah, yeah.
You know,
and I'm not casting aspersions on that at all. Yeah. I'm just saying there's varying degrees of what people believe happened during the election.
Yes.
And some of the most radical things that people believe are the ones that that could turn into a problem, that could be problematic. And it's problematic for people's mental health. You know, I was talking with a friend whose husband, she says, I feel like I'm living with a stranger. I don't know what happened to him. He hasn't talked to me for 2 days. He's communicating with people in text about these conspiracies. I know this guy. I've known him for 25 years. But he fits the demographic of somebody who may feel part of that left behind, segment of our population who has been following Trump. He's been getting into politics over the past 4 years, and she is not. So it's caused a big problem in their marriage. But that's anecdotal. But I'm seeing it. I'm seeing it, in different ways across the spectrum. And I just feel that, I reacted. I'm an independent, but I reacted when I started hearing people say that there was something wrong with all those 75 million people who voted for Donald Trump. They must all be racist. They must all be white supremacists.
Racist, Ben. Racist.
Racist and white supremacists. Extremists. And I said, wow, they're talking about my aunt. They're talking about my dad. They're talking about the guy my neighbor down the street. And I know sure as hell they're not racist and they're not white supremacists and they don't have a Confederate flag in their trunk. And I said to myself, this is how authoritarianism works. It was like, I think, Ben, you said this on a past show, this was the greatest gift they could have given, because the Republican Party is going to be, the entire party, this entire electorate is tainted by this. It's not fair, but suddenly 75 million people are suspect. And I don't like that. Even as somebody who's an independent voter, I don't like that. That scares
let's
me.
explore
We're going into Orwell territory.
Kelley, let's explore the possibility that the real insurrection is being done by people like Schumer and Pelosi, and they are the ones who are really tearing up the Constitution and saying no more freedom of speech, no more freedom of assembly, no more freedom of worship. They're the ones who are really tearing up the Constitution. I mean, the people who were parading around the Capitol in weird outfits, they weren't attacking the Constitution. But the people who've said you cannot express yourself, you cannot say stop the steal without committing a crime, that's a clear attack on the First Amendment. The people are saying you cannot gather and say we really wish Trump had won the election. They are violating the right to assemble. I think there is an insurrection going on, but it's not coming from the right. It's coming from the left, and they want to shut down the Constitution. And that, to me, just in my humble, fat old self, is much more frightening than this group of dopes running around the Capitol.
And if you just tuned in, you are listening to The World According to Ben Stein. We're joined tonight by Kelley, Vlahos, and I keep on putting a Spanish tinge accent on that when I say it. I don't know why.
Because you're in California.
Yes, but I want to thank everybody I want to thank everybody that's listening on YouTube. I'm reading all your comments, and I thank you. I want to, Ben Boychuk, if you could please tell people where they could find us, that would be very helpful.
Sure, why not? And then I'd like to make a point after the break.
Yes, please.
Please, the most important thing is subscribe to Ben's newsletter, benstein.substack.com. It's free. A lot of newsletters on Substack are not free, but Ben's is free. So you want to find out what's going on with the show and what other things that Ben might be up to, subscribe to the newsletter, benstein.substack.com. Like us on Facebook, if you wouldn't mind, at The World According to Ben Stein. And subscribe to the YouTube channel and subscribe to the podcast, the audio version of the podcast on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher. Give us good reviews if you wouldn't mind. 5-star reviews is what we really, really need. And
what I really need is a really simple recipe for a delicious Mediterranean whitefish called branzino. My sister, who's a wizard chef, sent me a recipe for it. And I said, this is way too complicated for a nitwit like me to make. And she got very mad at me. So if anybody can think of a simple recipe for branzino that an idiot like yours truly can make, let me know.
And let me give you guys a guideline for that. It starts with a lot of butter, a lot of salt, and a lot of seasoning.
A lot of olive oil.
And a lot of olive oil. And I want to welcome everybody back to The World According to Ben Stein. We're having a lively discussion tonight, but Ben Boychuk, I know you were a little silent. You wanted to make a point, so go for it, Ben Boychuk.
So I think the insurrection that you're referring to, Ben, has been underway for quite some time, and that constitutional government has been under attack for quite some time.
Quite some time.
And just to, as a point of personal privilege, I would encourage everybody to go to American Greatness after the show is over and search for a piece called Clarity in the Wake of Trump by Angelo Codavilla, in which, and Angelo is always forthright and straightforward. And Angelo makes the case, and I'm inclined to agree with it, and others here may disagree, but the republic is over. We're living under an oligarchy. This is an oligarchy.
I think that's absolutely true. Oligarchy is the Silicon Valley billionaires, the media billionaires, the billionaires who control the media. You're entirely right. The days when this ordinary citizen had rights and privileges, they're gone. The powers that be run this country out of Silicon Valley, out of Greenwich, Connecticut, out of Georgetown, out of McLean. The ordinary citizen, even a moderately well-to-do ordinary citizen like me, we're dirt. We're just dirt in the present America.
And so then the question becomes, how then do we live? Because, there's everybody can talk about, and we can speak in grand and dramatic terms about the right to revolution, but people tried to make that case for the guys who entered the Capitol on the 6th, but that wasn't a revolution. That wasn't an insurrection. That was, as you say, Ben, that was a show. It wasn't serious. So
I hope it's not going to ever get serious. I mean,
then what happens is then you have to ask yourself, well, then how do you accommodate yourself to living this way?
Well, it's easy for me. I'm an old man. I don't have that much more time to go. I just mostly want to spend time with my wife and swimming in my wonderful.
All right, but you've got a beautiful grandchild. I've got 2 kids.
I have an incredibly beautiful grandchild. I don't know how she's going to accommodate herself. I shudder to think. People I know who have children find that their children are brainwashed horribly. I have a very close friend whose daughter is 10 or 11 years old, calls her an ableist because she appreciates athletes and is impressed by athletes who can do remarkable athletic feats. And that makes her an ableist. And so that's the kind of insanity that's running through this country right now. And you know what? I don't have the strength to fight it. I will be happy to talk about it. You guys are all much younger than I am. You have the strength to follow it. Judah, you're a mere child. You have the strength to follow it.
And no, Ben, I get all my strength from you, Mr. Stein. And trust me, Ben, you have a lot of strength. But Ben Boychuk brought up a great word, and I want to get to that word because it's been Ben Stein's thing, and I want to ask all of you because we all could agree that the media has pretty much, and the media is all forms of Google and of all these things got tainted the election, however you want to say it. But could it be because the media's numbers, now that Trump isn't there anymore, could this be a media orchestration? And I know I'm going down a rabbit hole. I'm not trying to. It's just a thought that this impeachment is just another way to keep Trump in the news for a little bit longer to them. I mean, it's like, what do we talk about? Do we talk about Joe Biden signing 33 executive orders in his first week? A record amount? Nah, that's boring. We're going to give him the Nobel Peace Prize. We know that already.
Yeah.
But what do we
What's
talk
taking
about?
So long? It's 5 days and he hasn't gotten a Nobel Peace Prize yet.
Yeah, but Kelley,
racism. That's it.
Trump?
What? I'm sorry.
I said to Kelley, what do we talk about if not for Donald Trump?
Well, I think that's a very, very good point. I mean, the media is about selling newspapers. The media, if it bleeds, it leads. And if it's Trump bleeding, it really, really leads. And it's amazing. I get the LA Times, the New York Times, and the Wall Street Journal every day. Very little of it is not about Donald Trump in some way. It's really amazing. Nobody, they haven't found anything that they can hate, like they can hate Trump. In 1984, those of us who've seen the movies are the latest one with Richard Burton is absolutely incredible. They have the 2-minute hate every day, a couple of times a day. They have the 2-minute hate. Kelley remembers it well. This is what we have all day long in the media. The hate. Trump, hate. Then Biden, put up our hands. Peace, Biden. We're all happy, Biden. That's what we have in America now.
So what do you think, Kelley? I mean, we know that the media had a major coup.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're going through a sense of withdrawal right now. I mean, I'm on Twitter all day, for my job, and I have to say it's really demoralizing. It's been an awful few weeks. I mean, I follow threads coming in from the left, and I follow threads coming in for the right, and I have to say, it's just at the end of the day, I feel traumatized how angry people are, how vicious they are, how relentless on both sides. But I was getting a sense from like major media influencers that they just couldn't stop talking about Trump. Even on the day of the inauguration, people were following some goofy thing that Trump was doing, on his plane. And I'm thinking, wow, they're having a hard time. They're really going to have a hard time. And now, they talk about, how nice the White House press briefings are going to be now, since it's not as combative as it was during, the Trump time, or, they'll do these comparisons. Oh, isn't it nice to have a factual speech by a president? I don't know how long that's going to last. I mean, that's really not going to have the allure and the sort of zest that, going after the president 24 hours a day did. I don't know what Joe and Mika are going to do on Morning Joe on MSNBC, for example. I mean, their morning meltdowns are like epic. And what are they going to be melting down over now? Is it just going to be one big kumbaya with the gang?
Yes, it is.
But
yes, it is. The media is going to have a concerted effort for the next 4 years or for however long Joe Biden's cognition lasts to keep him as long as they can on a pedestal. There's not a doubt in my mind. Mika and Joe are don't even get me started on
the
her
father.
Ratings are going to go. That absolute foreign piece of garbage. God, I don't want to say don't rest his soul. Mika Brzezinski's father, an absolute anti-Semite. Sorry to go on that rant, but Ben Boychuk raised a great point. What do we do about our children? How do we protect our kids? How do they get acclimated? Because we live in Hollywood or we live in Los Angeles, some of us. And like I said at the beginning, you won. Stop spewing this absolute hate towards people. People want to go to
but that's what they are, Judah. They're haters.
Yeah.
They're haters. And if it, as I said just a few moments ago, if it bleeds, it leads. It's not, the kumbaya moment cannot keep us going for very long. It can't. I mean, even those midday shows with that horrible Whoopi Goldberg, they have to hate. It has to be about hate. It has to be about hate.
Right. But it'll never be against Biden. It
can't be about love. Billy Graham. I'm old enough to remember Billy Graham. I had the great pleasure of meeting Billy Graham. I have a picture of my father and Billy Graham up in my office a few feet from where I'm sitting right now. He gave national speeches about love. I wonder if that could be done nowadays. I would like to see Mr. Biden say, I'm going to give up all this hate. I'm going to turn to love. I'm going to make it my priority to have Americans love each other. Unless we have to go to war against a foreign enemy, I'd like my presidency to be about love. I'd like it to be about loving one another. And you can hate me all you want. I'm just going to show you love in return. That could be done. It would be a miracle. The Lord Jesus Christ did it. He got a great number of followers. And I don't see why we can't have a president who doesn't at least make some effort in that direction.
If that was the case, then that was the speech he should have given as his inaugural. Instead, he gave a speech in which he said, on the one hand, the nation is plagued with racism and white supremacy, and in the very next breath said, but we need unity.
Yeah.
What he really meant, I think, is we need subjection. And so to answer your point, Judah, you're not going to get your wish. There's no, magnanimity in victory with these guys. They believe they have a right to rule, and that the last 4 years were a mistake, and a mistake that will not be permitted to occur again. So there's two things I think we've got to think about. One is how to endure and forgive the verb, resist some of the laws that may or may not be coming, and some of the efforts to shut down dissenting speech. That's on the one hand. But the other problem that we have that we've got to wrestle with is for the soul of the Republican Party, because it's not just, it's not just 5 Republican senators today who are on the record now saying that this impeachment trial should go ahead. You've got Mitch McConnell openly talking about how terrible it was that what the president did, and how, maybe he's got this coming. And if that's the case, then what we're really talking about is, on the one hand, a fervent desire among the leadership among the establishment leadership, especially in the Senate and in the Republicans in the House of Representatives and elsewhere, saying, well, he's gone now. That's a relief. Let's get back to business. And then you have a sizable chunk. I wouldn't say it was all 74.2 million of the people who voted for Trump in November, but a sizable chunk of them who are saying, nah, we're not doing that. Sorry, there's a realignment underway, and there's going to be some changes, and we're not going back to the way things were in 2015. And if you think you are, then you are going to be in it for a big surprise when you start getting primaried, when you start getting, I mean, you know, longtime incumbents getting taken out, and we'll see what happens with reapportionment. There's some big fights coming among the Republicans, and you know, and there are a lot of independents, and Kelley, you're one of them. I am too. But I, you know, there's a coalition to be built, and if the old line Republicans think that those voters can simply be taken for granted, they are in big trouble.
What say you, Ben?
Yeah, but
Stein?
I don't see why the Republican Party cannot be the party of love and forgiveness. There is a wonderful line in the Bible saying that the man who can, or woman, of course, who can forgive is walking in the footsteps of God. Why don't we have the Republican Party say, we're very unhappy about what happened. We're going to answer it with love and forgiveness and attempting to make life better for everyone. We're not going to try to block up Biden's gears and ruin his life the way the Democrats did with Mr. Trump. We're going to try to work as constructively and lovingly as possible for everyone in America. I mean, the Republican Party was the party of love when the Republican Party freed the slaves. And that's something that people forget nowadays. There's been one party in America which was explicitly built on love of man's fellow man. That's the Republican Party. Why can't we try to pick up that thread and go on with that?
Well, I think there's a bigger issue, Ben, and that's because a lot of those Republicans in the party don't love the base. They don't love the base. They look at the base as a pox on them. They look at the Trump supporter as a pox on them. They've never actually listened to what the Trump supporter was talking about, what they wanted. You know, they just wanted a shot at the American dream. They want a shot at not going to endless wars. They just want to be heard. And the Mitch McConnells of the world, you know, and I just want to say this quickly. In Judaism, we don't name our children after people that are living because you never know how a person's life's going to turn out. So you don't want to name your kid after somebody that's, you know, going to be it might end up being a mass murderer. But it seems like every time I have faith and hope in one of these like senators and I give them, or I say Nikki Haley, she's going to be great. She all of a sudden comes out today and says, you know, well, I'm not for impeachment. History will judge the president. So you know what? From now on, I'm not giving kudos to anybody unless in 2 years' time, come to me. Then I'll give you kudos. But Ben, that's what it's about. People are tired. They don't feel like this Republican leadership cares about them. Like Mitch McConnell.
Well, but I'm saying refresh yourself with the blood of love and forgiveness.
They don't have it, Ben.
With hate.
Mitch McConnell doesn't have love and forgiveness.
And Stein.
You know, I don't, Mitch McConnell, great guy, important guy, great Kentucky, great state. Yeah. But I think that perhaps there's a chance that the future lies in love of one's fellow man. It's worth a try. I mean, an awful lot of very, very, very wonderful people gave their lives for that principle.
I'm going to say a terrible thing right now. Abraham Lincoln said, with malice toward none and charity toward all. And look where that got him.
Well, he was shot by one insane person.
Yeah. Kelley, you're in the swamp right now, and you're going through this a lot because you work for the Quincy Institute. You work for these think tanks. New administration comes in. People, you know, everybody change. How are you dealing with this?
I have to say that I'm in an uncharted territory. So I've been in Washington for a little over 20 years and seen changeovers in administration time and again, but I've never seen the upheaval that we're witnessing right now. And just to go back to the Republican Party a bit, I mean, I think we can all agree that Trump happened because the Republican Party was broken and it had left people behind. And there was a real populist fervor out there in 2015, 2016 that rejected, you know, the Bush dynasty, rejected Mitt Romney's republicanism, Marco Rubio's hawkism and neoconservatism. And, you know, Trump ended up being sort of a disruptive figure, but there was always some hope that it would make some space for somebody else or some other party, resemblance to come in and take over and better represent that base you're talking about, Judah. And I feel like the Democrats have sensed that, and their Never Trumper compatriots have sensed that, and the Mitch McConnells and others are sensing that through this, event on January 6th, that and the impeachment, that they can use that to shut down whatever inroads that movement, that populist movement had. And I agree with Judah. You're still going to be leaving these people behind, and their issues are serious issues, economic issues, income inequality, the opioid crisis, the endless wars, the feeling that there are communities out there that never recovered from the financial crisis, but because they're white and because they're they're poor, they're not getting any attention. Trump was the first one to come in and give them that attention. Did he pull them up? Did he do what he said he was going to do? I don't think so. Maybe another 4 years he would have.
Nobody can be left to do it themselves. The president can't make it.
Right, but
the president can't do that.
Right, but he was giving them attention. He was bringing attention to those people and to the so-called left behind.
He's totally right to do it, but people bring themselves up from lower middle class or lower class status to middle class status by education and work and saving. They don't do it by having a president wave a wand or the government wave a wand.
And let's be realistic, Kelley. Before pre-COVID, the unemployment rate was the lowest it's ever been. Everybody was seeing an uptick. People were getting big bonuses. Obviously the market is still high, but it was a time where Main Street and Wall Street were Trump actually managed to help. Ben's right. You can't. People have to want to get out of stuff. You can't force somebody out of a situation. They have to want to get out of that situation. Donald Trump did to almost every community offer that assistance. And I mean, and we like to forget that he actually achieved or tried to achieve for his supporters what he could. Was he able to do everything? Obviously not. But I've never seen a president in my lifetime. Ben did because because of Nixon. But I haven't seen a president in my lifetime try to do for his supporters what President Trump did, Ben.
I've never seen a president do it either, but I'd like to go back to this whole idea that the Democrats are always saying to the African-American people, we're going to give you some of our magic and make you a person who does not have much of an education, has grown up in abysmal circumstances with single-parent homes and the mother often absent. We're going to make you somehow grow up to be like the children of two-parent families who live in Greenwich, whose father went to Harvard and mother went to Wellesley. It's just not going to be the same for those people. They have to really make superhuman efforts. Give them help, give them education, give them money for education. Absolutely. But to wave a wand and think it will happen by waving a wand, it's not going to happen. That's not how it happens. It happens by work. I mean, it happens by effort and
exactly. But
sorry, Kelley,
darling. Right. But when you have a government, can you guys hear me? Yeah. When you have a government that is engaging in policies that drive jobs overseas, for example, their economic policies that have left workers behind, that haven't been nurturing families in communities, there are policies that left those people behind. And I think addressing economic policies that actually focus on families and focus on working families and workers instead of the bottom line of major multinational corporations that have, saw fit to drive jobs out of the country. I think that's worth a discussion. And I think Trump really focused on that during his campaign in 2016 and beyond. And like you said, Judah, he was doing a really great job at bringing some of those jobs back into those communities. I'm sorry that most of his time seemed to be taken up with Russia investigation and the first impeachment And I don't know how he got any work done half the time when he was battling, the Supreme Court confirmations that took weeks and weeks and end and beyond. So I think he probably did pretty damn good considering how much the Democrats were trying to get rid of him.
Damn good. Pretty damn good for a man under attack the whole moment. Every moment.
Absolutely miraculous. Ben Boychuk, I know you wanted to get your last words in, where you seem to be.
Yeah, no. I think I think that the next few weeks are going to be really critical. And I think that for the people who are watching this, and for roughly 74.2 million people who supported the president in November, they're going to want temptation to hunker down. You're going to want to be smart. You're going to want to be engaged. You're going to want to be watching very carefully the sort of legislation that gets presented. And you're going to want to watch very carefully what happens at this impeachment trial. Because there are, I think within the media and within the political class, there is a strong tendency to want to see all of us shut up. And I think we have to be very prudent now. I think we have to be watchful and prudent now about what happens, because we've been through cycles like this before in this country. And I've mentioned the First World War a few times on this show. And the way that, the Espionage Act and the Sedition Act were used to quell dissent in this country. And it was the dissent mostly coming from socialists, and anarchists too. And we're not anarchists and we're not socialists. We're Americans. But by God, every chance that, we talk about conspiracy theories. It was George Mason, I think, who said in the 1780s that government is a conspiracy against our liberties. And so, let's be mindful of that, and let's not be afraid, and let's just be watchful and be prudent.
We are not afraid.
And on that note, I want to thank everybody tonight for listening to The World According to Ben Stein. If people want to know how symmetrically connected Ben and I are, we both had a blowout on our tires one day apart. Very weird.
Who has blowouts anymore?
These are very good tires, supposedly.
His is a lot better than mine, but yes, mine's still very good tires. And I just want to thank everybody for listening. We appreciate every single one of you. If you could spread the word, if you could spread the gospel, just steal your friend's phone, take it away from them, hit the subscribe button on YouTube. Download our podcast. We couldn't do this without you. Ben Boychuk, can you please, I just want to give two shout outs. I have to give a shout out to the thing that is American Spectator, which is spectator.org. I want to give a great shout out to American Greatness, and please read that piece. It's amgreatness.com. I want to give a big shout out to Kelley Vlahos from the Quincy Institute, and you could read her online all over. She's got some great articles about a lot of different things. Ben, please say the place on Substack for us.
Subscribe to the newsletter by all means, benstein.substack.com.
And if Ben, you will lead us out in your normal, usual way with some sort of song, that would be great.
Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord. He is trampling out the vintage where the grapes of wrath are stored. He hath loosed the faithful lightning of his terrible swift sword. His truth is marching on. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. His truth is marching on.
We will see everybody Thursday night, same time, same place. We have Ken LaCourte for part 2. We salute you, America's humble servant, Benjamin Jeremy